Welcome to Practice Sessions, an introduction to militant sound research. UltraRed have designed this three-part series for organizers, cultural workers, and community members interested in political and collective listening. In Part 2, we discuss the steps in making sound recordings and preparing them for collective listening events. The presentation concludes with an appendix containing additional information on the principles and ideas behind militant sound research. If you are watching with others, we invite you to pause after each part to discuss the propositions and problems it raises. The accompanying PDF manual provides additional reference information for these discussions. Once the investigative team has identified a question, each member of the team must determine where and when to make a sound recording. This may be at a specific event or location, or in the form of oral history interviews with individuals and groups. Team members practice using the recording apparatus. Everyone should know how to hold the recorder, how to turn it on and off, charge it, or change the batteries, and how to activate the recording and playback feature. Making practice recordings demonstrates how the input volume control affects the quality of the recording. Like a photographer who relies on viewfinders, a sound investigator uses headphones to guide the use of the recorder. Headphones permit the investigator and the recorder to become partners in the listening process. To prepare for interviews, write out the questions and practice interviewing each other to find the clearest wording and right tone. Learn to improvise with follow-up questions while not losing the plot of the interview. When making a recording, investigators function like the recorder, hearing all sounds as important. Every sound is, in fact, multiple sounds in a complex relation. Hearing how sounds interact is as useful to the inquiry as identifying the causes of sounds. When interviewing someone, the investigator hears how the person speaks, as well as what the person says. Realizing that we are as much a part of the environment as the wind, or those who pass by, or the humming of the air conditioner, helps us to listen without judgment. Militant sound investigations hold that struggle is organized around contradictions, such as claims that equal opportunity exists in the midst of systemic inequality. Since sound registers time, context, and action, it roots contradictions in place, history, and experience. Thus, by listening to and reflecting on sound objects, an investigation is able to engage both the abstract articulations of contradictions and their concrete manifestations, their material form. To prepare sound objects, researchers log the sound events in recordings and draw out the multiple themes, which may be stated in words or in the ambiguity of sounds or in combinations and layers of sound. Recordings are cut and, if useful, digitally processed to create new contours and new combinations that draw on the logged elements and themes. A generative sound object poses problems more than it describes or reflects reality. Processing recordings can retain enough of the source material so that listeners connect to their own experience, but not so much that it simply represents that experience. Some forms of editing and digital processing, however, can overemphasize the hand of the researcher. In this instance, listening becomes about judgments of the composition's artistic quality. The proof is always in the listening. Every sound exists in time and space, and since time and space are the building blocks of human activity and struggle, sound is a venue where perception meets action. It is where the body politic encounters the material. UltraRed are guided in our investigations by practices of political listening found in the fields of organizing and specific forms of political education. Theories of sound, perception, aesthetics, listening, and politics also inform this work. Here are two key reference points for our work. The French sound theorist Pierre Schaeffer rejected the binaristic separation between active listening and passive hearing. Inspired by phenomenology, he theorized a more dynamic exchange within the field of sound, organized along two continuums, concrete and abstract, and subjective and objective. Delineated within the intersection of these dialectics, Schaeffer proposed 4 intersecting and constitutive practices. Listening identifies sounds by the real-world events that cause them. Perceiving reduces sound to its sonorous qualities as we bodily experience them, such as tone color, pitch, volume, and the spatial placement of sound. Moving from the concrete to the abstract, we open to an analysis of everyday life. So in militant sound inquiry, hearing focuses on subjective associations, such as the memories a sound triggers, and comprehending occurs when we critically analyze sound in relation to social meanings. The Brazilian pedagogue Paulo Freire also roots his theory of radical education in the relationship between abstract and concrete, and objective and subjective. In Freire's education for critical consciousness, people start from their lived experience. Coming together in a group, they abstract, recount, discuss those experiences together. In the process of reflecting, they then analyze their stories in order to understand the world as socially produced and therefore changeable. The dialectical relation between subjective and object reminds us that by critically analyzing and acting upon the world, we also transform subjectivity. The praxis of political listening at the center of militant sound inquiry shifts between silent and active engagement. By attending to dissonance and by foregrounding the other against the background of the self, political listening drives the dialectical exchange between self and the world.